Thank you, Darren. Let me first say, I bet in the 100+ years this building's been standing, there's never been a more beautiful sound resonating than what we heard the choir sing and the band perform. And I was just so touched by that, and I wanted to thank you all for the beautiful music that you made. And let me also say that, Darren, we in turn affirm our commitment to the United Methodist Church. We commit to being a church-related college that recognizes the social principles of the United Methodist Church and seeks to create a community of scholarship and learning which facilitates social justice. We commit to being an institution that respects and honors religious practice, and specifically worship and service for students and faculty who choose to participate in the Christian tradition within the total life of the college. We affirm our commitment to the church by respecting, by honoring, and providing scholarly theological teaching of religion in the Christian tradition within our curriculum. We affirm our commitment to the church by including in our faculty, staff, and trustees people who are values-centered and who understand and respect the relationship with the United Methodist Church. And finally, we pledge to strive to be the model United Methodist College or University in the 21st century. Thank you.
The Gospel reading from the 8th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spat on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked him, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't go into the village." The Gospel of the Lord.
Well, we are so pleased to have all of you present at our Church College Celebration Day. For those persons who are new to the Lindsey Wilson community, this is an event that we participate in annually each fall as we celebrate our unique identity and our close-knit relationship with the good people of the Kentucky Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, for whom we are stewards of this college. And students especially, want you to understand that this is who we are here. This service helps unveil the soul of our community. And I want to thank all that helped to make this such a lovely service already today. In Judeo-Christianity, you find truth seekers who practice something called anamnesis. Anamnesis is the refusal to forget and the earnest effort to remember. And we remember our identity here by writing it into the very first pages of our college catalog. You'll see there our mission statement, our credo. We attend worship services such as this, and we put it in our promotional literature, and we have as the symbol of our school, of all things, a 10-story round chapel. And it casts a healing shadow over everything we do here. In fact, our student newspaper quizzically asked a couple years ago, "What do you do at a school who has as its symbol a chapel?" And they suggested maybe we should change the name of our athletic teams to the Fighting Chapels, or maybe Terry Swan should be the mascot. And when I read that, it made me smile, but I thought these aren't bad questions because it shows students are aware of who we are. In your bulletin, you have a title of mission or shadow mission. I would bet for most of you here in this room, shadow mission will be an absolutely new term. It was for me 6 months ago, and I read this popular little book of the same name early in the summer. One of the benefits in starting a new master's degree in Christian leadership is I've gotten to read lots of new books in leadership. And the book Shadow Mission suggests that each of us has a mission in life, but also we have a shadow mission. And a shadow mission is just a slight deviation. It's as close as your shadow, but eventually following that deviation leads you to the dark side of yourself, to become your lesser self. Tori Morden McClure, who spoke so eloquently at our freshman convocation, talked about how critical it was to have a fixed point when she was skiing towards the South Pole using her compass. Just a little deviation off in a day's journey would have eventually taken her to the wrong place and possible death in the snow. I have to tell you, in earlier years on my many journeys for the college, I was kind of an ADD driver. I think some of the rest of you are too, because I arrive at the college about the same time as many of you. But I'd find myself out on the interstate in my car, and especially if there wasn't much traffic around, like on the Cumberland Parkway, I would get distracted, and I'd be fumbling in my briefcase, and I'd be pulling out things to look at, and I'd be writing notes to myself, and I would even pull out magazine and book articles and read them all the time while driving. I just said I was a Rhodes Scholar, but truth be told, I don't actually do that anymore, at least rarely, because you know what happens when you get distracted on the journey while you're driving, especially some of you who try to text and drive at the same time. You find yourself starting to deviate, right? And either going off the road or worse yet, into the oncoming lane. It becomes dangerous. And that is exactly what a shadow mission is like. Slight distractions with potentially disastrous consequences. Just like a tiny little drop of arsenic in your Coke. It doesn't take much. Now this can happen to nations. I think the whole history of Israel in the Old Testament is a story of a nation on a mission, and it keeps falling back into a shadow mission until the prophets call her back. It can happen to institutions. I think the story of church history is the church going on yet another great mission, and then the next generation comes along and diverts into a shadow mission, and the church ends up doing things it should never be doing, and the reformers have to come and call for corrections. But most commonly, it happens to individuals, to people like you and me. The yin and yang of life is not so much having a balance between the good and the bad, it's more trying to discern between the better and the best, not drifting to our lesser selves. A student athlete at our college might get his or her title reversed, and they start thinking themselves as an athlete student, and they neglect their studies, thus rendering themselves ineligible to demonstrate their athletic prowess at the college. It's possible for a teacher to become tenured and to start thinking of students as a nuisance who just get in the way of his or her research or writing or personal schedule. An individual can enter a service profession such as politics or medicine or even the ministry and become tainted by a little bit of power. Or something as innocuous as a hobby or a sport like golf or fishing or internet surfing or Facebook becomes such a passion, and it takes so much of your time that you stop neglecting the things that really matter most in life, like friends and family and faith. It's not so much of a blowout on the journey of life, it's more like a slow leak that happens to you. It doesn't take much to find ourselves deflated on a shadow mission. The early church, in finding a word for sin in the New Testament, borrowed a word from archery, hamartia, a Greek word that referred to missing the mark. And they said that's what sin is like. It's when you miss the mark that God intended for you. Reverend Todd Love, a former Lindsey Wilson VP, who is now on the Board of Trustees at Kentucky Wesleyan College, recommended a couple years ago I read a book that their trustees were reading at Kentucky Wesleyan. The book by John Burchell is called The Dying of the Light, the Disengagement of Colleges and Universities from Their Christian Churches. It's a book about the history of church-related colleges in America. And I thought it's kind of a fascinating title. He was suggesting the light dies and the shadows take over. And the book made a most compelling case that unlike nations or the church or even individuals, once church-related colleges have slipped to a shadow mission, they rarely, if ever, return to their original mission. They didn't typically discard their church connection, although many colleges did. They severed the relationship with the church. More commonly, they did not discard it. They simply diminished it or dismissed it.